And we'll begin, I guess, and we can continue to admit people as they turn up. Good morning to all of you, and to you also, Don Carlos. I'm so happy to be doing this today. I've been really looking forward to it.
Gracias, de la misma manera encantado de esta
Thank you likewise with this possibility of meeting up through these medias and to celebrate the existence of connecting from heart to heart.
Yes. In our lineage, open-mindedness, and our lineage is Rime. We have two terms in Tibetan, Rime and Suri. Suri means sectarian. It refers to those who think that their lineage is the only lineage that's worth anything in the whole universe. And Rime is a more open-minded attitude. Both exist among teachers. But my teacher before me and his teacher before him were all of the Rime attitude. There are Tibetan teachers who are not of that attitude. The question I would start by asking you, Don Carlos, is about lineage and about your teacher. It came up in a casual conversation among us. Can you tell us about your teacher and your teacher's teacher and some of your experience while learning, how it was, how you found your teacher, that sort of thing?
Bien, gracias por el interés.
Well, thank you for the interest. I would like to start then honoring precisely that legacy with a small introductory song
para el cual se sugiere esta disponibilidad del corazón,
from which the suggestion of this open-heartedness brings,
esta espaciosidad en el corazón,
this spaciousness in the heart,
esta presencia en el corazón,
this presence in the heart,
esta energía gozosa del corazón.
this joyful energy of the heart.
Bien, este linaje.
Well, this lineage has the context of the Mayan culture.
Ha recibido el legado y una revelación primordial que se pierde en la.
It's received a transmission and because oral transmission and oral tradition tells us of about 25,000 years of history, in which every 1,000 years, a feathered serpent, a Quetzalcoatl, actualizes the world in this part of the world that is called Anahuac. Before it was called Mexico, it was called Anahuac, which is a small bead of jade surrounded by water. So before it was Mexico, it was Anahuac. So every 1,000 years, what we do know from this tradition, ancestral tradition, that it actualizes itself throughout 25,000 years. So right now we would be in the 25,000 actualization of the feathered serpent. And it may come and reveal in a feminine or masculine form, and is what we call now the Toltec way, or the path with heart. There's no historic records of 25,000 years of this oral lineage. So I ask you that you accept as a legend or as a dream this possibility. What we do know of recorded history is in the last 5,000 years, and we have the four manifestations of Quetzalcoatl, and this character reveals this method of how to feather the serpent. And from my own lineage, I learned from my grandmother, and she's the one that told me that, the mother of my mother. She heals me from a disease similar to pneumonia with her herbs, with her plants, with her songs, where no known medicine, no antibiotics could not heal. So this calls my attention. I was 17 years old, and my grandmother says, we know very little, and we are forgetting even more this ancestral wisdom. And she suggests that I go and visit to the east of Mexico, what is now known as Yucatan and Quintana Roo, to go and meet with a family and a lineage that adopts me without even knowing and wanting the depth of this lineage. And they were also holders of this ancient lineage. They were very close to Coba, a very important archaeological site. And Don Sebastián May and his wife, Doña Josefa, they were in charge of offering me the basic teachings of this tradition. We could call it Maya from the cultural context, but Toltec from the elixir of wisdom. In this Anahuac that goes from the south of United States until Nicaragua, a very large area in which science, philosophy, spirituality, arts would gather together through the wisdom of these grandfathers and grandmothers, because in these places, we don't call them exactly masters or teachers, but we just call them through like grandmother and grandfather, so that they are close to us, affectionate way. So that this affection is inseparable. It's our family. And through this family is how this lineage arrives to us. As you know, in the 16th century, when we had the Spanish conquest, this Toltec tradition or this transmission was the main needed to survive. And it starts, and it arrives to us because it stayed in small family groups and small lineages. And suddenly we don't exactly search for this wisdom. It's the wisdom that finds us through a synchronicity and empathy. And we declare its love from the heart to this method, to this practice, to this devotional way, and this way of signaling, indicating the essence of being a human being. So we can talk about this more throughout our conversation and how these experiences can manifest. And even if they touch me personally, how I receive the transmission, but there's no way of appropriating this wisdom. But all we can do is honor and share it in the best way possible.
Thank
Y
you.
ahora Lama Lena, yo le devolvería.
And now, Lama Lena, I would put the question back to you. And I was wondering how you found this Eastern lineage, how that came about in your life.
So to honor that lineage, I will also begin with a short song, which I generally do whenever I will be publicly speaking to a group of people, or even to one person when I'm trying to convey something. It's not me, my personality, that conveys, but rather the totality of the lineage for which I am a doorway. My religious name, or my name within the lineage, is Yeshi Ketup, which means primordial wisdom capable of speech. It was given to me by my first teacher in this lineage. When I was very young, maybe 3 years old, we had a cat, a girl cat. And when she came into her heat, she stood by the back screen door and she said, "Out, out." And as a small child, I really felt that I knew how she felt, and I also wanted out. But I wasn't sure what that was. When I grew older, I had many difficulties with the society I was born into. Being expected to live a very circumcised life as a female, and being unable to accept that. Periodically, I tried to live as a boy, but nobody would let me. So when I was old enough to get a passport, I left. I got a passport and I'd saved up a few $100s, and I got on an airplane for elsewhere, trying to get out. At that age, I saw out as something to do with society, as something outside of me. But through many adventures, I began to notice that it might be inside of me as much as outside of me. And as I continued to bum around the world, finding my living in this way and that way, often living as a man, it's a heck of a lot easier to travel alone when you're dressed as a man and passing as a man. I traveled like that through different adventures until Oh, I had a boat, and was sailing along the coast of India and misjudged the weather and sunk it. And washed up on the beach naked with nothing, because you can't swim wearing a sarong, so I had to ditch it in the surf. It was storm surf. So while I was sort of there on that beach with nothing, I had a vision, which led me to the idea of going up into the Himalayas and seeing if any of the wise men up there. Before then, I had crossed Afghanistan on horseback and come to the great Buddha statues, which were deserted then, the ones that have been destroyed, and camped there. And it was also at that time it occurred to me to ask the wise men of the Himalayas if they knew where out was. So I traveled up to the Himalayas, had a variety of adventures, learned this and that, studied with the Hindus, got a whole bunch of magical powers with them, spent them, it wore off. Remember, I'm just a kid, I'm maybe 20 years old. So I get the magic that I can make anything I want happen. And then, so I make all sorts of things happen, a mansion, a couple of boyfriends, a couple of girlfriends, a silk wardrobe, all these fun things. So of course the power completely wears off because I wasn't doing the maintenance of it. And I found myself working 3 jobs to support all these things I'd acquired by magic. I mean, the wardrobe needed dry cleaning, the men needed feeding, the women needed feeding. And I realized I was on my way to work one day where I had gotten a job as a highway design engineer through pure bullshit, but it paid well, my day job. When I stopped because a herd of buffalo were going past to the slaughterhouse. On the corner across the street, there was a one-eyed old woman with a red dog sitting beside her. Although I didn't know it at the time, we have an archetype of a protector of the Dzogchen lineage who is a one-eyed old woman with one breast and a red dog. I didn't know this at the time, but that's what it was, my description of her. And she pointed at me with her finger and laughed her head off. This old woman across the street, and her red dog hung its tongue out and looked like it was laughing too. In that moment, it occurred to me that I could have done this in Teaneck, New Jersey, and was still in. So instead of going to work, I rode my bicycle out of town, across the rice paddy edges and into the foothills until bike wouldn't go anymore, and ditched it and started walking, and walked up a hill. And at the top was a garden and an old house. And in the garden was a Tibetan man in monk robes. And I came to him and I asked him in simple English, do your lineages have something that doesn't wear off, that's real and permanent? And he said, yes, we do. And so I asked him, can you show me it? And he said, yes, stick around, kid. I'll show you over some time. That was Lama Tupten Yeshi, my first teacher of the Galugpa lineage. I studied with him for about 3 years.
¿Ya tiene? ¿Y por qué no se le conectaba? Dice, no se puede conectar. Yo
Learned an incredible amount. But I kept asking him, you're my teacher, right? And he kept saying, no, I'm not your mother, I'm your babysitter. I finally despaired of finding my teacher who could show me this thing that was permanent, this thing that didn't wear off, that didn't require maintenance, that was real. So there's a religious three-cornered knife that we use ceremonially. And I had one and had been learning how to do gestures with it, which is part of ceremony. And I went to a place and I sat down under a tree, so in the forest, in the jungle, and I stuck it in the ground. I had a water bottle with me and some snacks, and said, live or die, I'm not leaving this place until I find my teacher. I'm going to out-stubborn it or die doing it, because I was in despair from being unable to find the one who could show me. I sat there for some time, ran out of food, ran out of water, kept sitting there, when an old nun, older than me, not that old, came out of her 3-year retreat. It's a long retreat we do as process of becoming a teacher, and went by back and forth from her retreat place to town by my tree. And after a couple of passes, she asked me, why are you sitting under that tree? And I told her. And she said, you're an idiot. I said, are you my teacher? She said, no, I'm not your teacher, but you're an idiot. You're not going to find your teacher that way. I'm sick and need to go visit my teacher. If you will come with me and carry my luggage, because I haven't the strength to do so, I will introduce you to many teachers and we'll see if anyone is your teacher. And if it doesn't work, you will have gained some benefit to the universe. You will have made some benefit to the universe. And I'll put you back under the tree when we're done. And I agreed to this. And we traveled for several weeks to her teacher and others of her teachers in the area. This is Annie Zampa, who is now a teacher in Brazil, in the north of Brazil. I was just talking to her yesterday on WhatsApp. She's a bit older than me, maybe by about 5 or 10 years. Anyway, as we were traveling, I kept asking every teacher we met, will you teach me? Will you show me? And they all said, no, I'm not your teacher. We were on our way home, back to where her retreat hut and my tree was. I despaired and was going to go sit under the tree and die and have a better chance next time. And we missed the last bus and were stuck in a terrible hovel of a bus stand hotel in a small city where we were supposed to change buses and missed the last one to where we were going. During the night, I had a dream of a hillside covered in wildflowers with the rocks all carved with mantra in Tibetan. And in the dream, I went through a tunnel and came out and then walked and came into a cave where there sat a man. And I asked him, can you show me the way to bring my mind all the way through to that which does not wear off, does not come and go? Are you the one who can show me? And he said, yes, I am. And then I woke up. Jampa, I just had this dream. And I described the person, who was tall and thin and wearing a robe like this, a Nagpa robe, married Lama robe, or not a monk, and the place. And she said, well, I've never seen that place, but I know the teacher. Then I woke up again. Jampa, I just had these 2 dreams. Anyway, the second time she said, I know the place, go back to sleep, stop waking me up, and I'll take you there tomorrow. I don't recognize the person, but we'll see what happens. So we went there the next day instead of going back to where we had been. And it was just as I'd seen it in the dream. And when we came into the cave, sitting exactly in the place I'd seen was a small round monk, looking nothing like what I'd seen, except that he was wearing black, heavy-rimmed glasses askew and had amazingly not very sane eyes, like other kind eyes. And that had been in the dream. We had no language in common, but Annie Jompa was feeling better. And I said, I'll carry your luggage down to town, but you're going back on the bus alone because I'm staying here. And I sat down under a overhanging rock and built it up a little bit to be shelter from the elements like a cave, and stayed. When winter came on, he showed me a better cave. There were about a dozen yogis on the mountain, Tibetan, and over the next couple of years, they taught me the language the way a small child is taught. Nobody spoke English. And so I began to study with my teacher, Wangdor Rinpoche. His teacher, he had been studying in a monastery since he was young. And because he was found to be very intelligent, they put him into the monastic college to be a scholar at the age of 14. However, the Chinese closed and destroyed the college as he was approaching 18, so he never finished. It's about a 12-year course. When he had a mentor at that time who lived in
Mira
a
aquí.
cave above the monastery. His mentor
Se me han tocado por
Aquí.
aquí abajo.
Conectar audio.
also
No, a ver si-
encouraged him to leave and not return to simply monastic ceremony. So without actual permission, he went over the wall and became a pilgrim. When the Chinese fully invaded, the Tibetans resisted and there was a bit of a war. He was near Lhasa, and due to a prophetic dream, escaped from that area a bit early. On the way out, he encountered one of his teachers from the college who did not walk well, being very tall, very fat, and somewhat old. And he carried him for a month over the Himalayas out. When he got out of the hospital for tuberculosis, he went on pilgrimage and came to this power point where the caves are, and found that the big cave was empty, a sadhu having been there but having left just a few days before. He asked the villagers, but they said the sadhu owed many people money, so probably wouldn't be back. So he stayed there alone for many years. Slowly over time, different Tibetan yogis trickled in, built up caves under the rocks, made them livable. When I got there, there were about a dozen of them. And we really didn't have anything. It had been about 12 years since the escape from Tibet at that time. I lived there in the caves, in one cave or another. There's different caves. For about 7 or 8 years. My time sense is funny of that time because everything was in the now. There was not a lot of past and future thought in the process of what I was being taught. After that, my mother became ill and I returned to the States to care for her. And then one day I got a call from my teacher who said, "I'm at the airport, come get me," in Tibetan. And I said, "What airport?" He said, "Your airport." Okay, where in the airport? By the telephones, idiot.
They were like,
So I went and we searched the airport around all the different banks of phones, found him, and for the next, goodness, 40 years, I traveled with him around the world while he taught and I translated for him. So this is my history. His teacher was his mentor, Lama Chunchong. The scholar he carried out, Tuxi Rinpoche, and his root teacher who showed him the essence of the pointing out, Jangchub Dorji, who had been the teacher of Lama Chunchong and whom Lama Chunchong sent him to while on pilgrimage. These are his main teachers. So we both have a combination. I think I had more intent and you had more serendipity, but both must have been there to some extent. Thank you. Now you pick a question.
Sí, quedé pendiente de escuchar el canto.
I'm still waiting for the song. Which one was it?
Oh, I thought I had done that somehow because I did it quietly before we started, so I felt it in me. Let me do it again. Chuku kunduzong bogombo doji sembagarab doji dang shere singa badu shin labde de damab zantata tusum chi zog chen jupe lamala solo de again pema junila solo de Dorji chang jitalo narodang marpa mila gomputsa tapa na pupadang balden drupa su kagula manamla solo de o chen manamla solo de Druchen lama namla solo deb Kaginvari lama namla solo deb Shakya lama namla solo deb Nyandu dang lama namla solo deb Palkon du dang yerme pa gon garab dorji jintrag pa jeti dang nisume pa lamanam jetente chung. The meaning of the song is it names many of a variety of lineages, plus the other lineages which I have received training in, which are personal. And then it says, as those who have walked before me have walked, as those who will walk after me walk, as those who walk with me walk, so we are not separate from the walking or what is walked to.
Gracias, Lama Lena.
Thank you very much, Lama Lena. If I may, I will share another lineage songs that precisely has to do with this cosmovision and this cosmo experience. And it sums up the method of the lineage.
Hunapku, hunapku, hunapku. No hojbil mehembil suyi. No hojbil mehembil suyi. Hoy la juntiku molontiku. Bakap chak, bakap sak, bakap ik, bakap kang. Bakap chak, bakap sak, bakap ek, bakap kang. Lakini chamani chikini nogoli. Ah bukti kap, ah bukti kap, ah bukti kap. Yung ku boti. Se habla desde el contexto de este linaje maya tolteca.
From the context of this Mayan Toltec lineage, to sum it up, it's three main principles of the energy. The first one refers to Hunabku, which is a vibrating spaciousness without end, which we refer to as the heart of the sky. And to the practitioner, the apprentice, the son, the daughter, the granddaughter, we ask them, how is your heart today? Is it opened like the heart of the sky? And that's not to confuse the path of heart with the heart of the body, the physical body, but to create discernment that the suggestion of the heart is that the heart is spacious, just like the sky, and it has presence. And we call that the heart of the earth, that infinite contention, affection. So it's like living in this planetary sphere, because maybe if we lived in Venus, we would call it the heart of Venus or the heart of Jupiter. But we call it heart of the earth as that presence that gives us unconditional sustainability. So how is your heart? My heart is present, and it comes close to that spaciousness. How is your heart? It's flowing and recreating itself continuously in this co-creative energy, which is blissful. So there we include then the heart of all beings in an affectionate interconnection. And therefore the mineral, or what we perceive as the mineral world, what the human perceives as vegetable, what the human perceives as animal, what the human perceives as human, and what the human perceives as spirits, organic or inorganic, they are included in that heart of the sky, in that heart of the earth, and in that heart of all beings. So the grandmother Josefa would always question me. Every day she would ask me, how's your heart today? And then an hour later, again, she would say, how is your heart now? And like that, 7, 8 times a day. And she forced me of stopping myself so that I would do this direct practice of recognizing that spaciousness, presence, and flow, this co-creative flow. And that is why we also call the Toltec, that he becomes skillful at listening to his heart, consulting his heart. The Toltec defines itself, one of the definitions is also an artist with a mirror in the center of his heart, which is always taking counsel in his heart, and deepens that wisdom and becoming skillful at listening. So over time, it has also this recognition, which might take time, but it might also be instant, the recognition of that instant presence of the heart. So one of the first symbols that we use is the heart, that goes way beyond the organ. And it also goes beyond the image of the sky. It also goes beyond the image of the earth, and it goes beyond the image of the beings that coexist in there and the image of the scientific explanations. So I ask everyone that's listening here, how are your hearts in this journey, in this conversation? So the elders, they also taught us gestures as an offering, and we put our hands like the claws of a jaguar as something that devours the human form. And we make the gesture of opening up the chest. And then we make a bowl with our hands, and we put the known heart as an image. And in that known heart of the human are all the perceptions, all the images, all the sounds, all the flavors, all the smells, all the wisdom, all the kingdoms, the mineral, vegetable, animal, human, spirit. And then we raise it to the mouth and we blow it, offering it. So we say that the Toltec is like a hollow mirror, that its heart is in all beings, that its heart is a limitless space that is always present. So we continuously invite of making these pauses throughout the day and of recognizing those three hearts in one, and at the same time offering it to all beings. And if we do this at sunrise and the middle of the morning, at midday, and so on and so forth, for moments, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, we have a continuous reference of that which that symbol may be suggesting to us. What suggestions do you have that can help us shake us up or remember in this life that is sometimes overstimulated for everybody? What suggestions would you have, or what symbols that could represent that?
Goodness, that is so beautiful. And I recognize that teaching in my own lineage. We use different words. We don't say heart, we say sem. But we tend to point at the heart when we say sem, if we're not thinking of what we're doing. Even though sem is not considered to have a location. When we are referring to the totality of it, the three aspects as a singleness, we call it semni. And we name the three aspects, the equivalent to your heart of sky, we call chuku. Your heart of the practitioner, heart of the interconnectivity, we call lonku. And I think you called it mineral heart, or we call it phenomena, thoughts, feelings, perceptions. We call it truku, recognizing that these are the same. the method of symbols that we use for this is to align the channels of the body to make it easy, because when our posture is improper, slumped, or twisted, we tend to distort our way of seeing things by the way the chi or airs run in the channels. So we pay a great deal of attention, especially in the beginning, when we are first becoming familiar with the process, to body position. Later on, it becomes irrelevant. And we do a practice called GOM throughout the day. First of the morning, to refresh, we shift our attention on purpose. And we have if you can't just shift it, there's all these different methods, including working with the eye gaze, because your attention follows where you look. So if you look to the left, you will pay attention to things on your left. You can't help it. If you look to the right, immediately your attention will go and you will notice the things to your right. So since we have this steering in where we look for our attention, we open the gaze of our eyes by relaxing the muscles that control the lens of the eyeball, so that we are not in point focus, but rather are equally opening our eyes so that the peripheral vision and the central vision are equally acute. Having done so, and this is done with the eyes half open and relaxed, the mouth relaxed, the lips a little bit apart, the teeth a little bit apart, the body muscularly relaxed. In this position and with the eyes in this eye gaze, it is easier to shift your attention from its point focus on what you are thinking, what you are feeling, and what you are perceiving, which is called inner and outer phenomena, even though it's not really inner or outer. To shift your attention from that where it's always been to the where that is occurring. Start with thoughts. You're thinking. Instead of putting your attention on what you are thinking, open it up to where your thinking be happening. This is heart of sky. Awareness, openness into the sky-like infinitude of Sem. Sem is the name of where thoughts, feelings, and perceptions occur. It is sometimes translated as mind. It is sometimes translated as heart. Infinite and open, but not just a big dead old nothing. It is vibrant and alive with the ability to perceive, which is the perceiver, the thinker, the feeler. That vibrancy, of which love is a symbol, and light is a symbol, and aliveness is a symbol, and all life is a symbol. That vibrancy is the awareness which is aware of infinite openness. But the beautiful dance, the horrible dance, the lively, sparkling dance of phenomena nonetheless occurs. There are thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. Truku. Frequently throughout the day, as often as possible, one returns one's attention to this, called chunyi. I guess you might translate that as reality, natural state, until one is absolutely sure by one's own experience, just as certain as one is of the law of gravity, where one doesn't even need to think of it, but walks around in utter dependence on it and taking it into account. So in that way, this chunyi becomes a complete of course over time, and it is the natural state of being and the essence of Dzogchen. The perceiver is in no way seen as separate from the perceiving or the perceived. This is the totality of the heart, which is both sky and vitality and phenomena arisings, without any separation between, and in which there is no practitioner separate from the practice. Even time and space arise in this, as this, and dissolve in this. And nothing leaves any mark in this, for it is completely unsullied and unsulliable. Just as you cannot write or hang a sticky on the sky, so in that way you cannot mark or distort the infinite open awareness, which is the natural state of life. It is only distorted by the karma created by our constant attempting to fix everything and get it the way we want it. That constant push-pull that we do involved in our personal hopes and fears simply adds layers of confusion. This is a completely relaxed state, which does not refrain from anything any more than it pushes anything, so that action occurs naturally and spontaneously in accord with the flow of the universe, in accord with all life in its manifestations in sky as sky. Does this not sound similar to you?
Suena similar y quizá por eso.
Yes, sounds very similar. And maybe this is why we have dared that the primordial lineages have a base of and that it adapts according to the different expressions of where it arises in different parts of the world, but they are indicating towards the same thing. We also use the symbol of the twin to refer to the energy body. We also use it to refer, my grandmother used to say it in a very loving way, very sweet way, your forgotten little brother, the one you abandoned there and you forgot that it's part of your essence. And this is also becomes a method in which this conditioned learning in which we get encapsulated in our body, like if we were in a shirt and we become contracted. So does the energy body. So the method that these lineages have is to be close to nature or in places where sometimes the power plants grow naturally. I know this is a big subject, not only to practitioners in these contexts, and also from practitioners that have not experienced these plants, but they are used sometimes as ways of access to that energy field. There's one specific plant which I would like to refer to. Of course, the energy body has access through dreams, through practice in the darkness, in caves, through fasting, even through great pains that we may experience in our lives. From so much pain or suffering, we have the possibility of relaxing and intuit that energy body. This plant is very well known, and I don't want people to know it very well either. But its name is balché. And it refers to the bark of a tree. So the humans are also referred to as a tree in the sense of a channel where the heart and the earth can recreate itself. So this tree has a bark that gets extracted as if we were taking our skin off. It gets peeled off. So we use the symbols of the human being, like peeling off our skin, peeling off those limitations. And then another tree, like a canoe, is used, and they put those barks mixed with honey, and it gets covered with palm leaves, and it gets put into the sun so it starts fermenting. And it says to the human, you're going to ferment in 4 days. So in those 4 days, you need certain prescriptions of silence and stillness. And it also may include a type of diet. And it says, don't interfere, don't add or subtract anything. Just allow for that that drink to ferment by itself. So the human being goes into that quietness. And then after those 4 days, that wine is extracted, and some ololiuki seeds, which is also a plant, a flower, part of the Pomea families in the scientific name, just a few seeds of that are added to the drink. And it suggests to us the different potentials of the human beings that may arise. And this drink is also sprinkled to the 4 corners, expressing that is the human being that is extended to the horizon and beyond the horizon, towards the east, towards the north, towards the west, towards the south. And the drink arrives to the 4 corners, to those guardian spirits and guardians of the teachings and of the lineages. And then within a very familiar family context, even in a ceremonial ways, we light incense of copal, and we drink it in a very informal way. And then the grandmother and the grandfather will start the narration, the storytelling of this cosmovision, this primordial cosmovision. And it will also include the songs,
Y ya para empezar a dialogar y a transmitir.
And then to start dialoguing and transmitting. And it says, Ijahe, everything is in silence and in darkness. Silence, which includes all sounds, and darkness, because it's not defined. Even if it's your constant experience, you cannot define it. And says, look, the sky is clear. And the grandmother and the grandfather start narrating how we rise symbolically, how we rise to the skies and how we come down from the skies, how we fly and how we crawl in the earth within an affection that starts interconnecting and interpenetrating everything. This drink is also a suggestion to rediscover everything that we are perceiving has the quality of a dream, and that the awakened state and its perceptions are also insubstantial. And then suddenly the perceiver discovers that he's a dream in itself, because that moves him. It puts him in a state of awe. And then the grandmother and grandfather says, now do you realize how nature, how a drink, its fermentation, how to drink it, to discover the openness of the four directions beyond the horizon, is also you as an energy body. And this energy body also becomes like a radiant spaciousness that is interconnected. And it gives back vitality, bliss. And this natural drunkenness, we're not talking about normal drunkenness. We're talking expanding the heart. And the elders, especially the Nahuatls, used to say, from the heart of the sky comes the beautiful flowers. The human desire makes them ugly. So learn how to ferment yourself without adding or subtracting anything within stillness. And it may be standing up, it may be sitting down, it may be even walking, but without interfering with your hands or your thoughts, but to allow precisely for that vision to become clear and clearer each time. So this is like a presentation to this aspect of the sacred tree as a central axis in the shamanic ways. Maybe I'm even speaking of technical terms, but in the Mayan context, we talk about the yaché, which is the balché, which is the drink, which is also another kind of tree, and the sibché, which is a cleansing plant, which is also a protective plant. And these are all suggestions, symbols of these extended sensations and perceptions of the energy body. So what references or symbols do you have from your lineage?
Such a different climate. The verdant, nature of growing trees in the land in which your lineage has flourished and rooted, compared to the high upland, almost desert plateau covered in snow for more than half the year, with a wind chill factor frequently in the winter of 40 below, we don't have so many plants. Some in the springtime, when the monsoon first starts, you'll get some wildflowers and grass that the animals eat, a few herbs, but it doesn't have the natural verdancy up in the high upland plateaus of the Himalayas compared to the almost jungly, warm, and very different area of Central and North America. Although there is some desert there, it's a warm desert. So we do not work with nature as much, especially as half the year you're huddled inside of something, trying to keep away from the weather, and nature is trying to kill you. If you don't change the grass in your shoes that line your shoes frequently enough, your toes will freeze, you won't be able to walk, and you'll die in a snowdrift. Easy to die up there. And because of this, and because there was very little vegetable matter that could be grown up in the high plateaus, as far as crops, it was all herds. And the eating of meat and one's herds, and yet one has a very personal relationship with these animals and does not want to kill. Very different land. And therefore the method, not what the method points to, but the method is very different. We sit inside somewhere, protected from the elements, because the elements are trying to kill you half the year, maybe more than that. And we imagine. An example, very simple. We imagine a time in our life where we have truly loved the way when we were a small child, we loved our mothers. Before that relationship may have become more complex in adolescence. Or the way we would love our babies or a kitten. If you hold a little kitten and it's purring and it's got its eyes open and it looks at you and it bats at your nose, there is something called heart opening or heart melting, which is a sensation you feel in these circumstances. For many people, holding babies will also give that sensation. The sensation of Ningji, heart opening. In fact, when we see a cute puppy or kitten or baby, we say, oh, Ningji, it's the automatic exclamation. We take that feeling and we perceive our heart as a closed bud of a lotus plant. We use the symbol of a lotus because it grows in the muck and mud, is nourished by the muck and mud, but blooms completely pure and free above the water. And even if you splash mud on it, it rolls right off. Lotuses do not grow up there. They are a myth, but we still use the symbol brought up from India. The closed lotus bud, it's closed by your attempting to protect yourself all the time from other people, from wild animals, from the climate. So you take this feeling and you water your lotus bud with it, which is in your heart, so that it blooms and it has 1,000 petals. And as it blooms, each petal elongates into a ray of light, light being the symbol of life, of love, and touches the heart of another living being. It could be a bug, a bacteria, a bird, any other living being. And through the flow of that ray of light flows your feeling of Ninji. And it waters their hearts so that their 1,000-petaled lotus blooms. And each of their 1,000 petals reaches out to the heart of another living being, just as each of your 1,000 petals has reached out. And you keep increasing this by 1,000-fold while singing a song. And traditionally, we hold beads while we sing it. This charges energy into this so that by touching it, the memory of the feeling comes back. Should we be in a time or a place where we are frightened or angry, we can just touch our beads. And that feeling of Ninji and of interconnectedness comes back. So as we sing the song, these rays of light, of love, of Ninji, touch the hearts of 1,000 beings, which touch the heart of 1,000 beings, which touch the heart of 1,000,000 beings, of 1,000,000,000 beings, including rays returning to your heart so that it's an exchange. It goes, it comes. And we do this and sing the song until the entire universe is nothing but light. It is so full of rays that it is as if it was solid with transparent light, which is not solid at all. The song is simple. Om mani padme hum ryo mani mami 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 ryo Om mani padme hum ryo mani mami ryo mani mami ryo mani mami ryo mani mami ryo Om mani padme hum ryo mani mami ryo mani mami ryo mani mami ryo mani mami ryo. There are many, many tunes that can be used, and new tunes can be made up. If I can do it, a traditional one. Om mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum. And one continues to sing in whatever tune one chooses while sitting or walking. The visualization and the imagination is what's so important. Until the whole universe is so full of these rays that interconnect all life to all life by heart in Ninji, that there is no separate beingness, just light. And the light is not solid. It is just light, transparent, clear light. The syllables of the song turn around in a clockwise direction in the center of that lotus, and they are different colors which relate to different emotions and different realms, which may be seen as worlds or lifestyles or experience worlds, such as the hell realm, where acute pain is the general experience and it goes on, or what we call the Preta realm, where lack and poverty and despair is the strong experience and it goes on. The animal realm, where just trying to get what you want, get fed, get laid, grow old, die, without any curiosity beyond that. The human realm, where everything goes into intellectual stories, the Asura realm, where everything is a competition and warlike, and the God realm, where everything is a pride and a samadhi of bliss, which eventually wears off. We categorize experience into these 6 or 5 categories, and each one relates to an emotion. And the troublesomeness of these emotions, such as fear and anger, to the hell realm, unsatisfiable want to the preta realm, ignorance and selfishness to the animal realm, competitiveness and striving to the Asura realm, and pride and what we call samadhi, which is concentration and pride in one's practice, to the God realm. The negative aspect of these emotions, not the ability to feel, is softened by all of these colors. And just like the color wheel of all the colors together become transparent light, like going backwards through a prism, so all these colors together, as the syllables turn, make up the transparent light which extends as the petals. It's quite a complex visualization, but you do it again and again all day for weeks and months, and it changes one. We don't have the power plants to work with in the lineage. So we have to use our imagination and repetition. The symbol of the lotus, the symbol of light. This is all the vitality aspect, the midpoint of the 3 we spoke of. Sambhogakaya, Lonku. And it is the bliss of the sky heart, in your terms, I believe, of the Chuku. The vitality, the bliss, the awareness, the aliveness, which manifests as all and everything and nothing at all. So these are the methods we use, evolved in a completely different climate, but pointing to the same sky-heart expansion of the channel body. This particular practices works just with the heart chakra predominantly, but we have other practices with the channels where you run airs in through the nostrils, down, where you change lust to heat and use it to clear the central channel. Many practices like that. But it's all done with imagination, visualization, and the repetition of song. It's a lot of work.
It's wonderful. Truly wonderful. This way of describing the potentials of imagination. What also happens with plants, for examples, is that it may suggest that they also exhaust the capacity of imagination. They can deplete that quality, the excess of the plants. Even if we don't recognize fully that there's no internal or external, it's that energy and that potential of imagination, that quality of the child that is spontaneous and that is able to recreate entire worlds and also to dilute itself in them is a wonderful, is a fabulous thing. And I think that that is the thread that unites, that we cannot forget the potential of imagination as such, or as well as underestimate the legacy of the power plants. We call them master plants, because it's very important to understand that they come together with instructions, suggestions, and diets accompanied to that, because it's not about the plant teaching anything in itself, but it's associated with the song, with the context, with the teaching. It is interweaved together with those important suggestions that indicate or point to something. If there is a consensus in most of the, within the grandmothers and grandfathers in the native cultures, is precisely that now in these times, the plants are being abused and misused for momentary experiences, as weekend experiences, for sudden quick enlightenments that don't last. So all of this also has an integration process. It has dietary prescriptions before and after a ceremony. And that's why it can also become a path in itself, as in symbols and revelations, when those are very well focused.
Yes, we also have dietary restrictions in some retreats and practices, not in all. There's one that works with the same pattern archetype as the one that I taught you, but is done slightly differently, where one fasts both food and water on alternate days. And on the day in which one does eat, one breaks one's fast with a very digestible soup, porridge. And for the one meal of the day, there's another digestible evening porridge, but for the main meal of the day, one eats vegetarian, very greasy, cheesy, I guess it would be like mochi swimming in butter with cheese and brown sugar on it. A depth bomb for the digestion. And what this alternating fasting and this particular kind of food eaten on the eating day does, it's like there's a central channel which is important, in which all of the chakras lie in. It works like a toilet plunger on it. Slop, 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 and gets the ook out really fast. When you fast, the qi lung energy goes up. And when you eat fried, greasy, heavy starch, it drops down. So it just reams it up and down through the central channel, which clears that out really fast. There are also a lot of visualizations you do during both days, and a physical exercise, which we call prostrations, where one offers up all one's hang-ups, admits them, puts them out there, and then stands back up as a member of all Buddhas of the four times, or as the archetype one is working with, and then does it again. And that's done many, many times during both the fasting day. It's a very intense process called Nunye, and it is incredibly powerful. We do it a couple of times a year as a group up at the caves. Oh, and you're in absolute silence on the no eating day. Nothing passes your lips. no food, no water, no speech. It certainly will give you as intense an effect as some of the powered plants, just by the activities involved. Again, the climate difference gives us very different things to work with as method to get to, as near as I can tell, between you and I having talked, the same not place.
De acuerdo.
Indeed. Somewhere between awe and silence, one starts losing words. Another fundamental symbol that we use is the body, nature, cosmos, in the sense as a form, as a little treasure, what we call corn seeds even. And those corn seeds, they will sprout from the earth. And also the caring for the interaction with our inner space. And we say, let's give holidays to our liver, and that means a certain kind of fasting. And let's give holidays to our kidneys, and it also means another kind of fasting, and that we can regenerate the qualities of energy in reciprocity with that which is perceived. That even within these contexts, I mean, we're talking generally here as something substantial, like a tree is a tree. But there's an affection, there's a love between the tree and the person. So I'm not going to cut down that tree without consulting with it, without asking it. I am not going to build a house on top of a tree without consulting. I'm not going to extract minerals from the earth without consulting with the guardians, because then there's a natural inclusion. And also through the body, we cleanse it and we purify it and nurture it. What we call the parcel or the space that expands, and it has the quality of expansion, in which we reestablish a connection between the organs, the cells that go from the very microcosm to the expansion, to the interconnection of the offering between the inner and the outer, to offer oneself to that, and to give it a symbol like a color or a smell. These are only suggestions or symbols that suggest the quality of respect and honoring to everything that is alive. And this is also the way we have of suggesting, or the way we can also use the body and nature as a symbol.
That's so beautiful. You have so much more nature to work with, to notice, than we do on the high plateau. The most obvious thing in our environment is the big, giant, dark blue sky, which is the symbol of the sky heart, as you call it, Chuku as we call it. And we also offer ourselves at the beginning of each ceremony, again, by song and hand motion. We make a mudra, a little bit more difficult with arthritis, of the 4 continents and the mountain in the middle. And we sing. Sajipake Jugshing Me Tog Tram Rirabling Ji Nihidegan Adi. This is the union of the outer and inner cosmos, where the mountain in the middle is your spinal cord, and the 4 continents are your 4 limbs, and the sun and the moon are your eyes, and the adorned with flowers are your clothes. And the mountain in the middle is Mount Kailash, the tallest mountain around there. And the 4 continents are said to be the 4 continents on our world. And this association of the mandala given as both all of the outer and all of the inner runs through so many symbols. We wear the bone ornaments on our wrists and ankles to remind ourselves, they clink occasionally and you notice them, that the inner is the outer and our 4 limbs are the 4 continents. So many similarities I'm finding.
Así es, estamos encontrando.
Yes, we are seeing and finding similarities.
Shunang ha, Yungkak, Yungkak, Yungi, Yungi, Kanile, 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 Hum, Hum, Hum. Así ofrecemos también en el lenguaje maya.
This is how we offer in the Mayan language, Yucatec Mayan language, the body, the blood, the desire, the thought, so that it cleanses and nurtures wherever it's required.
Beautiful. I heard you say what sounded like the syllable hong. Does that have a specific meaning? It's a very powerful symbol in our line.
Sí, acá significa hum, unidad.
Yes, indeed. For us, hum means unity, the breath that expresses itself from unity and pervades everything. The breath that emanates and interpenetrates everything. Also, in the sense of counting in Mayan, Hun is 1 in Mayan.
Mm-hmm. For us, it is the symbol of the heart chakra, the symbol of sky heart, as you would call it, chuku, the symbol of the totality of everything. And we work with it. It's in so many of the songs. I'm translating mantra as song.
Sí, desde luego. Por esto iba a decir principio primordial, o quizá no principio ya escuchado, decodificado,
we could also call it that perception of the human that refers to in Mayan, the base would be hun ab ku. So hun would be the first syllable as the breath, a as something that is without limits, but can also take form, movement, and measure. Ku as an act of realizing in one instant, hun ab ku, we realize that we of where everything emanates, where all perceptions emanate from. But it may take a form according to the human perception, and this is like a fire lighting itself. That awakening, the awakening to realizing the perception of the source.
And we have Hong Om, which is Chuku Olonku Truku, which is heart, open, spacious, intent, awareness, liveliness, form, manifestation. We often say them in the opposite order, Om, Ah, Hong, but the meanings are the same. This is getting fascinating, but we're almost on for 2 hours. If we're going to take any questions from the audience, perhaps we should let them do that soon. If you like, maybe we can do this again at some point. I really like it.
De acuerdo, con mucho gusto.
Yes, that would be a great pleasure. We would love doing this. If there's a question that we can summarize of the ones that are reading through the chat, if there's any specific questions that need to get answered.
Use your microphone.
Oh. Okay. Close or
Open.
give us the question. Okay. So there's a question for each of you, one for Don Carlos and one for Lama Lena. And for Don Carlos, the question is, how does one begin to learn these Toltec traditions? Lama Lena is always careful to caution us about just reading about any practice, how important it is to go and actually see the teacher, to begin the practices physically, to say the mantras openly, and etc. So what are your suggestions for somebody beginning to learn more about the Toltec practices?
Sí, que sea ese su verdadero intento del corazón.
Oh, in the first place, that it's their true desire of the heart. Unfortunately, many of these lineages have been not exactly secret, but very discreet for need to survive. But it is still possible to reach. And you can find good teachers that accompany you on this journey. Somebody who really can go beyond the word, beyond descriptions. And it may be even in dreams, and that you can feel a true empathy with that knowledge and that wisdom. And if you have that connection with that lineage, which is also transcultural, beyond culture, but it has its root and its form within Anáhuac. This culture that goes from the south of United States all the way down to Nicaragua. So I pray that you may find a good teacher in this exploration of the path.
And For Lama,
Wait, he gets.
oh,
to
I'm
answer.
sorry.
I'm sorry. Was that the completion of your answer? Okay.
Sí, sí.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Nando, ask question. Okay.
So for you, the question is this, earlier in the discussion, you mentioned dark retreats. Both you and Don Carlos spoke about that. Can you give more details about the Tibetan Buddhist version of dark retreat, how it functions and how it's structured?
So I can give a little bit. You need to turn off your mic now. I can give a little bit, but I can't openly here give the full instructions because it's considered a secret practice. And it is not a beginning practice. You need to be a fairly experienced practitioner, having done other retreats to a fairly good extent before undertaking this one. The tradition is 49 days. Plus, there is a re-entry time as you reacclimatize your eyes to light. During that time, you are served food. You're deep in we have special places designed for this. There can be a deep cave. There's an antechamber, and outside where your food is prepared or brought. You're served food. There's usually a hatch, but no light. The server has ways or a rope they follow to come in carrying the food in a certain place they put it, and a certain place from which that they can feel by touch to take away any leftovers, debris, dirty dishes, whatever. So you really don't do anything for yourself. You usually have some latrine thing, and if it's a bucket, then there's someone who takes that away at a time, and you put it in a certain place that they can do that. And you remain in the dark, and you visualize and work with gazes and eyes, different kinds of eye visualizations, eyeballs, eyes, looking back at you. It is a process of rangrik done symbolically. Rangrik is self-seeing. In practice, once one has successfully relaxed into a sort of an open awareness, there is something euphemistically called or symbolically called turning around and gazing into your own eyes. This involves the seer perceiving itself as it is, which is in no way separate from seeing or that which is seen, but this as an experiential rather than a knowing. It is among the hoped for effects of this retreat. This retreat is thought to deepen one's ability at concentration, free one from certain culturally placed constraints, and allow one to see one's own nature. At the end of the time, and you don't have a way of knowing time in there, there's no clocks in there. At the end of the time, then you come out, and there's usually another chamber with just, or into that chamber is brought a tiny little bit of light. And a little bit more the next day. So if you do the full 49 days, it's anywhere from 3-5 days a week before you can tolerate the light of coming out and you're cared for during that re-entry time. You're in silence and in solitude during the retreat. There are a few places that have the setup for this. Norbu Rinpoche has a place out, or his group, since he's no longer with us, has a place out on the East Coast. And I believe Tenzin Wangyal has a place somewhere in that setup for the dark retreat. I have not had the opportunity to do that retreat. So it is not something I personally am capable of teaching. But there are other teachers I can send one to if that's needed. It takes very specific facilities. And we're just old cave yogis, so we didn't have specific facilities. That's usually more attached to a larger organization or a monastic group. Do we have another question?
Not many at all. Maybe they're being shy, but
Ya.
Something from Martin?
and I've just been kicked out of the.
Puedo agregar en una conversación con un amigo.
If I may add something from a common friend that we have here, and Professor Elias Capriles. He heard once Chogyal Nankai Norbu that the most similar vision that he had found from the Bon of Tibet in similarity was precisely the Mayan tradition. And now we are observing through this conversation, these convergences, and we honor very much these similarities and honor the differences. And this is the beautiful of the creative diversity of the emanations of the source.
Yes.
That at the same time, it helps us converge in the heart. It expresses in manifold manifestations.
IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combination. Yes, that's fictional Vulcan, but I've always liked that philosophy. As we are probably at about 2 hours now, so this is time to let people go rest. Thank you so much. Let's do this again.
Everybody's been saying thank you.
I think it's delightful. Now, you have some dark retreat cabins?
En este momento no hemos tenido.
At this moment right now, we don't, but we used to have them. And now we're organizing again. We're creating a space in which we can do the dark retreat once again.
How long do you do it for?
Basically here we do it for 9 days, actually 8 nights, 9 days. Almost like the process that the seed of maize takes when you put it in the earth. So it lives a process of reconfiguring itself. And in those 9 days, you have a possibility of opening up that vision, although we know practitioners that you can stay a lot longer, but I've only received the transmission of the 9 days. And it also has this training of the practitioner. This is not just for any practitioner. It's for more advanced, and you also train yourself in the vision, also in the coming in and coming out of the retreat.
Should circumstances ever align for it, I will at that time request of you the opportunity to do that retreat in your line. We dovetail enough that I think it would probably be just sufficient, and I have not yet had the opportunity. If circumstances converge sufficiently to flow into my doing of this, I would like very much to do so.
Sería un honor
It
acompañar.
would be an honor to accompany that process.
We shall see. I can't guarantee anything about the future, as one can't. It is, at least in our tradition and maybe in yours, when we have completed something that may be of some benefit to ourself or others, a song which speaks to the sharing of that benefit rather than the hoarding of that benefit. I'm sure you have one that does this too. It's basically as those who have walked before me, as those who walk with me, as those who walk after me have done, will have done, etc. May all benefit arising out of this conversation be open and available to all life, or benefit all life. Sala Gopashu.
Oh,
This is the shortest version of that song. There are longer versions, but I find it enough to invoke the feeling, which is the point. Do you have one that does this? Or one that is traditional on closing?
sí, sí, sí. Oh, Nama. Oh, Nama. Na, na. Oh, Nama. Oh, na, oh, oh. Quiere decir que todas las madres
It means may all the mothers accompany everyone in its blanket of protection and realization throughout this existence.
Beautiful.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the translators of the various languages.
Yes, very
thank
much.
you, Martin, that I've been hearing you for all this time. So thank you, Lama Lena. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the organization.
And a last question I have for you, simply, may I have your permission to make this recording available to people?
Por favor, por favor.
Yes, of course, please.
And
that may be of benefit to all people.
So I don't know if you recorded on your end, but if whoever's techie among your people wants to contact Nyando, she'd be glad to send you a copy. Because we have recorded this and it should have come through nicely. We only had one internet hiccup and that was brief. So thank you.